Hi, welcome to the bathtub, where when you hear we have no special effects anymore. Our only special effect now is Dodo. We're doing what's the pre-digital? We're doing the pre-digital age. We're going back to the way YouTube was when your grandma used to watch YouTube, and we don't have any special effects, no whiteboard. The bird is all we got, and me, and we're going to talk about Dodo. Not loud enough. We're going to talk about Cormac McCarthy. We've had a lot of people asking about Cormac McCarthy over the years. See, before my evening cocktail, I can't speak. This is just ice water. And I've enjoyed Cormac McCarthy. We have a few bathing buddies who don't like him and don't get him at all. I can sort of understand that to some degree. But I've always found him pretty interesting. And I think the first book I read, like many people, was Blood Meridian. And I thought what we would do is in a series of pretty short... don't need to bite me anymore. In a couple of short videos, we would talk about... basically, I was thinking of reading through Cormac McCarthy's work. He has 2 novels coming out at the end of 2022. I believe they come out in October and November. He's a pretty odd character, and he must be in his 80s. Oh, here I think I've shown you this before. That's his signature on a book card. My old editor at Picador got me a few of these, and I lost them for some reason. Anyway, that's Cormac McCarthy's signature when he showed up at my friend's office. So anyway, I'm doing my normal babbling, but I've liked it. I think I've read all of McCarthy's books at different periods, and the first one was Blood Meridian. I'd read most of his books, and I reviewed several of his books. I reviewed a couple of my reviews are in my book, the Toni Morrison book, which is here. I reviewed a couple of the two of the Border Trilogy novels and I collected them in this Why I Hate Toni Morrison's Beloved book of essays from a few years back. And I read all of his books off at different times, when I heard he was writing The Road, about an apocalyptic, the end of the world told from the point of view of a father trying to take care of his kid, I knew it was going to be a breakthrough book for him. It sounded like because basically all of McCarthy's books are apocalyptic. They're all like about the apocalypse is just starting, or it's about to come at any moment now. And even Blood Meridian, or even the parts of the Blood books like Child of God and some of these really dark, nightmarish books, they're all about this kind of end of the world, biblical disasters are showing up all the time. So I thought that what I try to do is go back and reread from the beginning to the last 2 books. So maybe by the time we get to the new novels coming out in October and November, we've read through to them. And I started with this one, The Orchard Keeper. It says here it was published in 1965. Cormac McCarthy said he spent many years working on it, and I think that makes sense. I forget the name of his editor. He had Faulkner's last editor, I think, at Knopf possibly, and I forget his name already. But he was kind of notorious for having picked up this famous editor who had worked with the great Faulkner. He's very similar to Faulkner. You can see he's read Faulkner over and over again. Lots of the stylistics come out of Faulkner. He's a lot less difficult than Faulkner. So I don't think he's nowhere near as imaginative or original in terms of creating the way his stories work, or telling point of view shifts that we saw even just in As I Lay Dying, where you have 30 or 40 different points of view, and they're all using kind of extremely articulate language for people who are not necessarily that articulate. Most of McCarthy's stuff is third person. He shifts point of view quite a bit, and it's the style is not too different from one book to another. And they are plot-wise, they're fairly good stories. They're pretty easy to follow the story. The Orchard Keeper, I didn't quite like it the first time I read it 20 years ago or so, and so I started that with that one to see what I thought of it now. And it took me a while to get into it, but I did like it. So I liked it more than I did the first time I read it. There's certain passages in it where he's sort of creating this style of his, which I think are almost just terribly pretentious. I think people who don't like McCarthy think he's quite pretentious. I'm going to read one bad passage and then one good passage and then leave it there. He's talking about some really poor neighborhood. I think it's somewhere in Tennessee, in this area of these beat-up old houses. They were rented to families of gaunt, hollow-eyed, and dark-skinned people, not Melungeons and not exactly anything else, who reproduced with such frightening prolificness that their entire lives appeared devoted to the production of the ragged line of scions which, shoeless and tattered, sat for hours at a time on the porch edges, themselves not unlike the victims of some terrible disaster, and stared out across the blighted land with expressions of neither hope nor wonder nor despair. They came and went, unencumbered as migratory birds, each succeeding family a replica of the one before, and only the names of the mailboxes altered, the new ones lettered crudely in above a rack of paint smears that obliterated the former occupants back into the anonymity from which they sprang. I don't think that's very good. That paragraph's a little bit laborsome and a little exhausting. It's kind of even actually hard to get a breath reading it. It's one of the most of the book sort of reads better than that. But you can sort of see him sort of developing his style in a way in the opening chapters of this book. The plot is very loose. It starts off with a kind of horrific killing, and there's a guy who seems to have just gotten back out of the army. I forget his name already, but his son is Ratner, a guy named Ratner, who seems to be going home to his family. It's hard to tell what he's doing. He's completely, obviously, kind of lost his mind a bit, and he gets picked up by a guy who I think is he's running whiskey. He's running illegal whiskey all around the countryside there and picking it up and selling it. And he gets into their car, and for some reason he attacks this guy. There's a long kind of violent scene in which the what do you call him? The moonshiner, Silder, his name's Silder, kills this man and throws him into the woods. And when he gets thrown into the woods, this is the opening to 30 pages, so it's not a big reader. It's not a big spoiler. An old man who lives up in the woods finds the body and covers it over with leaves and branches. I don't know why exactly. He doesn't know why. But he's a very, very old man with a really, really old dog. And I forget what his name is. Anyway, the son of Ratner is growing up, and he meets Silder by accident, and Silder gives him a dog, and I forget they help each other out. And these three men, it's kind of about their relationships, which are not really deep relationships, but they kind of orbit the same kind of rural backwoods life of hunting and minor thievery. I'll read. There's a scene with the old man when the old man is for some reason attacked. He destroys some government property, and they come to get him. I'll just read another passage which is a little better, and to give you an idea that what makes McCarthy fun to read is he has really great narrative riffs. He really goes into really good storytelling riffs, very similar to Faulkner in a way, but even better and much more filmic. He's a very visual writer. In fact, what he really reminds me a lot is he reminds me a lot of the Sam Peckinpah. Every time I read one of his books, I kept thinking, this is like a Sam Peckinpah movie written by Faulkner. And I'll read you one little passage. They came 3 times for the old man. This is page 185. At first it was just the sheriff and Gifford. They were 1 foot up the porch steps when he swung the door open and threw down on them, and they could see the mule ears of the old shotgun laid back viciously along the locks. They turned and went back down the yard, not saying anything or even looking back, and the old man closed the door behind them. The second time they pulled up in the curve of the road with 3 deputies and a county officer. The old man watched them from his window, darting and skulking among the bushes, slipping from tree to tree like boys playing Indians. After a while, when everyone was set, the sheriff called from his place under the bank of the road. "Come out with your hands up, Odenby. We got you surrounded." The old man never even turned his head. He was in the kitchen with a shotgun propped over the back of the chair, and he was watching one of the deputies hunkered up under a lilac bush in the west corner of the lot. The old man kept watching him, and then the sheriff called out again for him to surrender, and somebody shot out a window glass in the front room, so he didn't wait anymore, but pulled the stock in against his cheek and cut down on the deputy. The man came up out of the bushes like a rabbit and hopped away toward the road with a curious, loping gait, holding the side of his leg. He'd expected the man to yell, and he didn't, but then the old man remembered that he hadn't yelled either. The kitchen glass exploded in on him then, and he got behind the stove. I mean, that's just 2 pages of this kind of long riff where the local officers trying to get this really old guy, who then goes off and lives even higher up in the mountains with this incredibly old dog. It's one of my favorite parts of the book. But anyway, I did enjoy reading it. It's got a lot of the stuff that you're going to sort of see in McCarthy's later books, and I thought we would try over the next 6 to 8 months, or we're waiting for possibly the last 2 novels this guy writes, because he's getting pretty up there. Might try to read our way through the McCarthy novels in sequence. Okay, stay safe, happy bathing, all pre-tech all the way. We're going pre-tech all the way. Okay.